Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades.
I'm going to sit closer.
I am Matt Connerton. Yeah, go ahead, Gary. I showered today. I've got my Old Spice.
I didn't.
This is the Honorable Gary S. Hopper, who apparently didn't shower, but I can't smell anything anyway.
Yeah.
So
Good.
it's all good.
Be thankful for allergies.
That's right. Did you have a good 4th?
Yeah, I guess it was okay. I always look at 4th of July as amateur night, so I kind of keep low. And anyway, we got some guys in the back. I don't know whether they blow up entire cans of black powder or what, but they make some pretty nice echoes through the valley.
Really? Yeah.
On 4th of July, it's kind of fun listening to that. So
Yeah.
I think I stayed home.
I saw a Facebook posting about that from you.
Oh yeah,
You said
yeah,
it was
yeah.
very loud.
Very loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wakes up my mother's dog and stuff, so that's good.
Did you see what happened in San Diego
No.
with the fireworks? There was a computer malfunction. You can watch the video online. It's pretty interesting. There was a computer malfunction, and they set off everything at once by mistake.
accident?
Yeah, so it's like, it just looks like this big ball of
Flame?
fire. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
that's
pretty awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Tonight's guest is Lee Quant. He's from Exeter, New Hampshire. He's a state rep. He's been up there for... When did you get first elected? In 98?
98,
98, okay. So you were 2 years before me.
and I had 2 breaks.
You had 2 breaks, right?
Right.
Because you ran for Senate
Right,
against Prescott.
yeah.
And that you did okay, but not enough to get stuck being a senator, so...
Lucky me.
Lucky you. And one reason I wanted to have Lee on for for one he's running for speaker because we've had Bill O'Brien on,
Yeah.
and Lee's running for speaker, and I think he'd be a great speaker. But in this last session, Lee and I were on the same side on right to work,
Yes, yes.
and you got booted out of. Like I get kicked off my chairmanship. You got booted out of finance
Yeah.
early on. That was over the
After the budget was completed,
after the budget was
and
completed.
after it was voted on in the House,
Right.
then I got my walking papers.
And just to be clear, so this is being removed from a committee because you didn't go along with leadership,
Right.
essentially,
Yeah.
in both cases? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he got booted out of. I think that was for the Kirk Amendment, or was that just over?
There were so many Kirk amendments, I can't specifically tell you which one it was.
Okay.
But it was generally,
The Kirk Amendment was basically an anti-union addition to the budget. I forget what it was specifically, but
Yeah.
there were so many of them, they would bring in an amendment and that hadn't had a hearing, and we would be voting on it, and then they would bring in an amendment to that amendment that never had a hearing, and we would be voting on it. And it just came to a point where enough was enough.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't go along with this anymore.
right. So they booted you out.
Yes.
You were heartbroken. From
Oh,
what
I cried all the way back home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, the high point of my finance career is I had the distinction of sitting right next to Representative Valancourt.
Just the mention of his name makes
Oh,
me
I know.
giggle.
I like Steve. Steve was actually one of my mentors.
Oh, really? Yeah?
Yeah, and he's such a colorful individual.
That he is.
And I had a lot.
Good word.
I had a lot of
Yes,
fun, watching him and listening to him and learning
Yeah.
from him and
Wow.
learning what not to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Steve
Yeah,
is a
learning what
teacher.
not what to. Yeah, he's good at that.
You don't use inflammatory German words, I hope.
No,
Good. Okay.
No, he was in Vietnam, so there would be more
Vietnamese.
Asian type.
Yes, Asian inflammatory words.
Yes, yes.
But I am German.
You,
Oh, okay.
yeah, you don't want to admit that on the show, though, Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah. The now I posted that Lee was going to be on, and somebody, I'm not going to mention names because I don't get into trashing people on the show, except you.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
But somebody said was because you were one of the in the House of Representatives, we have a group called the House Republican Alliance. The House Republican Alliance was, I think, the first group in the House that actually started holding legislators accountable for what they were voting for. Started doing scorecards, started making sure that there was roll call. Because was Paul Mirsky a freshman when you were a freshman? Or
I don't remember.
we're pretty close.
I know in 2000, in 98, we had about 30 members of the HRA.
Right,
And we were pretty much the conservative right wing of the legislative body.
right.
In 2000, we had Mirsky, Sultani, and Quant, me, as co-chairman of the HRA. And we boosted our numbers to about 88 to 90 that you could count on for a conservative vote. It used to drive
Sure.
the then speaker crazy because we would frequently go our own way. But what we prided ourselves on, even though we were conservatives, there's no way around it, we prided ourselves on talking to people and working stuff out and not attacking.
Right.
Anybody that attacks before they talk is an amateur, in my book. I
Yeah.
mean, that's something you just don't want to do. You're
Yeah.
asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Right, especially when you don't even understand. It was like when I posted that Lee was going to be on there, they intimated that he was a rhino, and that's what he's been called because of the right to work vote.
Okay.
Okay,
Were you on? Rick Olson has some sort of list he publishes, right? Of like the Rhino of the Month or something that he talked about on the show.
I heard something about it. I don't read that.
Okay.
I don't read his
yeah, but
his
you probably
postings.
would have made that list.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I did.
Yeah,
Did you? Yeah.
but it's just the irony was the idea that Lee was one of the founding members of the HRA, and when I came in, like he said, he was co-chair, and the HRA was, as a freshman legislator, is where I went to for guidance. It was guys like Lee and Mirsky and Sultani, because I didn't really know what to expect when I went up there.
Sure.
I sat and watched some of the votes, like parental notification for a young kid to get permission from their parents or the parents to be at the minimum notified.
Right.
And saw those going down in flames in a Republican-controlled legislature.
Yeah.
It was confusing, to say the least.
Sure.
And so having people like Lee in the HRA to, ask questions, well, why is this doing this? Why? And we had, and basically what you had in the House by the year 2000 was, like Lee said, about 80 good conservatives, but you had about 80 rhinos.
Okay.
And those are rhinos in the real sense of the word. In other words, they run at that point. They would run as Republicans because they wouldn't get elected otherwise.
Okay.
But they're actually Democrats. And that's truly what a rhino was back in 2000. And back then, I don't know what I was scoring 90-something% on the HRA list. I think I helped Rob Boyce do the list one time.
Yeah.
Me and Dan Itza and Rob Boyce and Laura Boyce, and I think I got almost 100 that time.
Really? And
When I helped pick the votes.
that's calculated. That's calculated only. Is the voting, your voting record, is that the only specific criteria?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only roll call votes, and Lee and I are actually becoming more of a rhino according to that list because that list is changing. It used to be, if you were against taxes, if you were against the income tax, against the sales tax, you were pro Second Amendment, pro strong family, basically fundamental Republican beliefs. You scored high on the the HRA list. Now it's switched completely towards libertarianism.
Okay.
So now it's, do you score high on libertarian issues? More so, not completely. But like every 2 years I get around 90%.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that, I don't believe in payday lending and stuff like that. So,
Right.
But this year I think I'm down to 80-something%, 82. I'm in the low 80s or high 70s or something like that. So the list itself has changed, not the.
Is it the Free Staters that have infiltrated?
Yeah, you had a lot of Free Staters.
Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers are. Do you have any clue what the number of libertarians we have that are claiming to be Republicans?
Libertarians or Free Staters?
Isn't it the same thing?
No. Your old guard, every conservative Republican's about 85% libertarian. It's that other 15% that goes off the right-wing scale. When you talk about libertarianism and conservatism, Republican conservatives believe in government. You just want to keep it small,
Just
keep it
limited,
hungry, lean, and rein it in. The 15% that's off the scale don't believe in government. They want to reduce all your licensing.
We want it to be like the Wild West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't need police, we don't need firemen, and I'm thinking, hey, wait a
Crazy
minute.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care if you're a libertarian or a free stater or a conservative Republican, Democrat, whatever. If your house is on fire, you need a fireman.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
need your next door neighbor saying, boy, I'm glad we don't have to pay for their retirement, and they're standing there with a garden hose,
Right.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
or you need a medical emergency. You want an EMT there.
Right.
You know,
right.
you're not going to say, you getting paid overtime for this?
Right.
You know, fix me up, get me to the hospital, tell them my heart's gone again,
Yeah.
or, you know, whatever. And
Yeah.
there's your difference. What's really scary right now is the absolute intolerance, and I say intolerance/ignorance. We have, for example, and Gary mentioned it, right to work. When I was on finance, we had a number of people come in and give us briefings about finances, budgets. We had a number of colleges, the UNH people were there.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them said, when a business calls us and asks us about New Hampshire, they want to know, one, what our educational level is and the dependability of our workforce.
Yeah.
Not one, and I asked this question a couple of times. Did they ever ask about right to work? They said, no, it's never brought up. They don't care.
Right.
So this right to work battle has been forced on us from out of state. And that's where a number of people have dug in their heels saying, we don't want right-wing / semi-hate groups trying to dictate to us in New Hampshire
Yeah.
what's good for New Hampshire when it's not even an issue in New Hampshire.
Right.
Go home. Leave
Yeah.
us alone.
Yeah, 'cause
we'll
this
deal
is-
with our own problems.
There's this huge anti-union movement across the country.
Extremely well funded.
Mm-hmm.
What most people, and just so everybody understands, I am a conservative Republican. I got back from Vietnam in 71. 72, I was Mel Thompson's campaign manager in Exeter.
Oh, no kidding.
For 6 years, 3
Wow.
terms.
Yeah.
That's why I laugh. All these people are saying, well, Mel Thompson. Well, I knew Mel Thompson. I remember when his wife gave him $6 a day to take his campaign staff out for lunch at McDonald's.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I don't know if Mel was as frugal as his wife was, but
Yeah.
Gail used to know, keep the money tight.
Yeah.
And, Bob Monia, John Sununu, Judd Gregg, when he ran for governor and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but being a state employee, I'm a retired state probation parole officer. I belonged to it was State Employees Association. Then they affiliated with DC and became SEAU in 1984.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize that it was a few years ago that there was a vote taken, and it was a close vote, to disenfranchise. New Hampshire is New Hampshire. We are not DC.
Mm-hmm.
We're not California. And I think we have a better idea about how to deal with issues in New Hampshire. If the facts were known, I think people would realize that the so-called New Hampshire advantage, if you ask everybody running for governor, unless they've read my blogs, what the New Hampshire advantage is, they'd probably say, oh, it's low taxes, we don't have this, we don't have that. No, it's not our tax structure. We don't have a very good tax structure in New Hampshire. We don't have a sales and an income tax, but we tax on about everything else. Mm-hmm. It's our workforce. That is the New Hampshire advantage. That is what's bringing people and businesses into New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. It's our dependability, it's our educational level, and we need to keep that up.
Yeah.
Just to keep the businesses saying, hey, don't steal from me, make sure you got a good education, show up for work, and we're going to have one heck of a good time in New Hampshire.
I think the other false flag in that whole thing is the how many businesses, quote unquote, would be moving to New Hampshire. I think we have like a 5-something% unemployment rate.
Correct.
Yeah,
So one of the lowest in the country.
unemployment rates in the country.
We're usually second or third lowest, yeah.
And so we wouldn't even have the employees to fill those jobs if they didn't come.
Right. Yeah, we have
mean,
one of the
it-
lowest rates in the country in both good times and bad. I mean, this state really
And it
does
has-
well with that.
And it has nothing to do
With right to work.
with unions or right to work. New Hampshire, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, because they never pay attention to the facts, they only listen to the rhetoric.
Yeah.
New Hampshire is a non-union state. You cannot be forced to join a union. I was told at one point we had one company in New Hampshire, which I won't name, that was a closed shop. And it was a closed shop because they had the freedom to negotiate with the employees, the union, and the employers. And the deal that was made was, we will take and train, and this was a technical job, we will take and train the new employees and pay for their training and make sure they get retrained every year. The only thing we're asking is to make up for that expense, that they be forced to join the union. And that was a deal that was struck. And, you know, people were saying, oh, that wasn't right. Well, where is the freedom if you can't do that? And they're saying, well, you can't be forced to join a union. Well, can we force unions and employers not to negotiate deals that were beneficial to both sides? And Gary, I know Gary, and it was really pathetic. If you disagree with some of these groups, you're a rhino, you're a liar, you're this, you're that. And, you know, we're shaking our heads and we're trying to say, look, we don't want to call you idiots, so don't act like it, and we can't call you that.
Right.
But, you know, like I say, when I work with Gary, in the house with Gary, we've been together a number of years and we haven't agreed on every issue. But, you know, I think we do it the way it was intended. We disagree and we move on. You know, whoever wins goes out and buys lunch for the other guy and vice versa. And you can sit down and talk about it and laugh and have a good time.
Yeah.
You know, now it's really toxic. And it's regrettable. I mean, I've heard speeches coming from the speaker and, you know, saying that, oh, if we pass right to work, our economy is going to go into hyperdrive. Yo, wait a minute, let's stop watching Star Wars.
That's all it takes?
Let's get down to reality here, right? Beam me up, Scotty.
Work factor 9.
Yeah, get me
and
out of
right
here.
to work, and we're on our
And,
way.
you know, and we're just sitting there. But what's really interesting is New Hampshire, more than any other state in the United States, has had more anti-union and public sector attacks than any other state.
What percentage of New Hampshire employees are union compared to like other states? I thought we're pretty darn low on
We're
the,
between 7 and 9% of our workforce.
is union.
Yeah.
What's that nation like?
I don't have the nationwide numbers.
Because I think in some states, like for instance Massachusetts possibly, you do have such a high percentage of people in unions that control too much,
Right,
and they're choking the hell out of the state.
right.
But I don't see, you know, most of the stuff, if you people complain about as far as unions are teachers' contracts and things like that, but those are all voted on
Locally.
locally.
This has nothing to do with us at all.
No.
And there is a problem, and we all recognize it, and it's called spiking. And that's not going out and shooting one of those little tiny deer with tiny horns.
no?
No,
No,
that's,
no.
leave that one out, Gary.
Okay.
And what spiking is building up this financial war chest for when you retire. And we got people making more money on retirement than they did on active duty, if you
Really?
put it that way. Yeah. And they're working on fixing that right now. Everybody knows it has to be fixed. People have taken advantage of it. And what these anti-union people are not taking into consideration is we agree with them. This is wrong.
Yeah.
So why attack everybody? If you're in a union, you're not a Republican. A real Republican does not support a union. They are not in the union. We talk about the state employees in New Hampshire, which I'm retired as one. You know, these are the people that man our prisons, clean our highways, clean our rest areas, mow the lawn in the middle, get run over from time to time, and I don't mean that to be funny. We have lost state employees getting run over in the median. We just had a bridge attendant killed on the Portsmouth Bridge where he was run over.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about
Just
that.
recently,
Wow.
like within the last week.
Oh, my God.
And, you know, these people are not our enemies, they're our allies. And what's amazing is, I'll just give you some rough numbers. State employees have about 9,000 to 12,000 members, whether they belong to the union or not. I don't have those exact numbers because it's been fluctuating a lot. But it's broken down approximately the same way that the voters are broken down, a third, a third, and a third. Now, when I was actively involved with the Republican union wing of SEA, The independents usually would side with us. So that gave us about 6,000. Now, 20% out of the Democrats were the very liberal wing of the party, and they pretty much controlled, what was going on. But the remaining Democrats are like Democrats here in Manchester, the Franco-Americans. They're Democrats because their parents were and their grandparents, but they're fiscally conservative. Most of them don't go along with some of the, the more liberal agendas.
Right.
So why alienate these people? The Republican wing alone can field about 15,000 votes. You get 3,000 SEA members. Each one goes to in their neighborhoods and gets 5 friends to support whatever the issue they want. It's not that hard when you mow the neighbor's lawn and all that.
Sure.
They'll say, yeah, don't mean anything to me. So then you have 15,000 Republican votes. You do not win elections by turning your back on 15,000 votes.
Right.
I've talked, and right now, just to make it clear, the Republican votes, the Union Republican votes feel they have nowhere to go. They don't want to go with LaMontagne. They don't want to go with Kevin Smith because they've already signed on to, we're going to pass right to work, we're going to fix those unions. Wait a minute. There's going to be a heck of a lot less of you people in the next legislature than there were this past time, the past 2 years. So it's just a very immature political attitude that's going on. And I said, and I don't know how many times on the floor of the House, you do not attack unions. You negotiate with them.
Yeah.
What's not known in New Hampshire is collective bargaining was given to us by Mel Thompson. You didn't get much more conservative than Mel. I mean, we were called right-wing lunatics back then.
Yeah.
And now we're being called liberals, rhinos, whatever.
Yeah.
And the deal was he would give us collective bargaining, and we would agree not to strike. That's why state employees cannot strike.
Oh, okay.
We live up to that agreement.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had sick out over the years where you could take up to 3 days, but you had to show up on the 4th day.
Sure.
And you may be required to have a doctor's slip.
Yeah.
But that was used very, very sparingly.
Yeah.
So when they're attacking us, it's like they're cutting off their nose to spite their face.
And I had to build on that. I noticed when my wife was calling around, 'cause she's a teacher in Manchester in a teachers union, and she was calling around. She was actually kind of shocked at the percentage of members of the union that were actually registered Republicans. It's not the union. Members of the union are not all that liberal.
No, they're not in New Hampshire because they're New Hampshire workers.
Right.
I mean, we have the younger activists, which are very hard to control. I mean, you have them in the Republican Party, you've got them in the Free State Project, you've got them with the Liberty Alliance or the Republican Liberty Caucus, whatever they are. And they're more anarchistic than they are trying to work an agenda. They're trying to gain control.
Yeah.
And not working with people and trying to make New Hampshire a better state. They're trying to control it. They're trying to take over. And, when I was trotting through rice paddies, I'm only 5'5½". And when there was water in them, the water would come sometimes about up to here.
Back in Vietnam.
And in Vietnam. And they used human excrement as fertilizer. So the old saying, you really stepped in it,
Yeah.
that's where I think it came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the one thing that kept me going was knowing I could come back to New Hampshire. I was going to
Okay.
live. I was going to come back home.
Yeah.
And so I always felt that I had kind of a special tie here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we came back, and, the good thing about Vietnam, when you fought somebody and won, you only fought them once. And I wish I had Gary in Vietnam. It would have been a blast.
Yeah.
I'm sure Gary wishes he had been
Yeah.
there with you, don't you, Gary?
No.
Oh, okay.
His younger days, I think he was quite a boy. So, anyways, you have that understanding, and but when you get in politics, you got to keep fighting a person over and over again.
Right. Yeah.
So it takes a little more energy.
Yeah.
It takes more energy, and it takes. It's like you said. We don't have that. You kick somebody's butt on one day, and then the next day you're friends with them, working on them. I think that was actually one of the first things Representative Kirk from Ware told me. He says, when you get, because as I was first time when I got elected, he said, when you go up there, keep in mind, that you could adamantly disagree with somebody today, but tomorrow you might want them to vote for you.
Yeah.
You might be in agreement. Like we had last year we had Neil Kirk and Claire Ebel from the ACLU.
Oh, yes.
And Claire, I disagree with probably 70% of the time, but she's delightful. She's very bright,
Entertaining.
entertaining. She has free candy,
Yeah.
Ooh.
but on the privacy stuff, we totally agree. So
Claire went to give me a piece of candy out of her pocketbook.
yeah.
And it was actually a pat of butter that she got out of a restaurant. So
Oh, really?
I asked her, can I wait until I find the toast? I mean, opposite sides of the fence, but just
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she is a really nice lady.
Yeah, but it's very troubling when you look at people that have worked so hard at making the Republican Party what it is today, being attacked by people that have only been in the state a few years,
Yeah.
and calling them liars and rhinos, and they do not have a clue who they're talking about, and they don't have a clue about people's backgrounds. And I, like I say, I thought it was shameful when they went after Gary,
Yeah.
because I knew better.
Yeah.
And I felt sorry for Gary for having to put up with it, but I was pretty much embarrassed by the people that were doing it.
Were the two of you the only Republicans in the House who
We had about 50
Yeah.
who voted?
against right to work.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's been close, and a number of times it depended on, how many people were on vacation.
Sure.
And we would call back into session 3 times without getting paid,
Oh, really?
hoping that nobody would show up.
No kidding.
Oh, it was
Interesting.
It was
Which, yeah,
pretty
that
nasty.
that was 3 times last fall. There was a pretense given for why he had to call us back. The fact of the matter is, since 2000 when I got first elected, how many times have we been called back in the off year to vote on?
Maybe once a year, maybe.
Maybe not even.
Something
'cause-
would come up, financial issue.
Yeah,
or-
usually it was like, in other words, there's a budget thing that they had to fix, and they had to get the votes. But Speaker O'Brien called us back, 400 members of the House, nobody's getting paid. You got people out there like that work full time and are doing this part time,
Sure.
and trying to do their part to help society, who are losing hundreds of dollars every time they go up there. He called 400 people back into session 3 times just to try to get right to work through.
No kidding. Wow.
And the only time you do that if there's a lot of money backing the issue.
And there was.
Okay.
There is.
Yeah.
We understand that there is. I mean, we
Follow
had.
the money.
We were very, very embarrassed because whenever you tell a fiscally conservative Republican, we're going to cut a tax, everybody goes, yay, let's do it. So we cut the tobacco tax by 10%. The following week, the tobacco companies raised their prices 9%. Who took the money for that deal?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we weren't born yesterday, and there's been some real interesting conversations about that.
Yeah, it was a little more than a coincidence.
Yeah, stuff like that just doesn't
Was
happen.
they just taking? Do you think possibly they just took advantage of the?
They couldn't have done it that fast. This was orchestrated.
Really?
If you remember, somebody went to D.C., had a meeting, came back, went to the Senate, and said, unless you drop the cigarette, unless you take the cigarette tax reduction by 10%, we're not going to support your budget. And drew the the line in the sand. And Chuck Morse, the Senate Finance Chairman, said, if that's the only way we're going to get the budget through, then we're going to go ahead and do it. But afterwards, everybody felt stupid,
Yeah.
except the people that pushed for the 10%
Right.
reduction. I mean, it's just, how do we explain to the voters that we screwed up and we were lied to?
Right.
And more than once, we voted on bills, or I voted on bills, only to find out within a week or two, this is not the way it was portrayed. So
It's got to be frustrating. That's
Oh.
got to be beyond frustrating.
it's horrendous.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's a lack of honor that's starting to grow, and that's not what you want.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the problems we have in the House is there's a lot of people who equate politics with warfare.
Yeah.
Okay, which is ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand the analogy, but in warfare, it's a life or death situation. So you have to be willing to do anything to win.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
If you are unwilling to compromise your principles to win, you're going to lose. You know,
Yeah.
because that's what warfare is.
Right.
In politics, the ends don't justify the means justify the ends. If you compromise your principles to reach an objective, you've fouled the result. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a completely different animal.
Well, plus in politics, in theory, everyone wants ultimately what's best. Everyone wants what's best for the state or what's best for the country or whatever it is. Just people have very different ideas of how we get there or
Right.
what actually is best. Whereas in warfare, you're literally on opposite sides and you're trying to kill each other.
Right.
But in politics, the end game is the same. It's just everyone has very different ideas of
But
how to get there.
now that it's starting to be what's good for me and screw my constituents or our constituents.
Yeah.
I mean, we had things like the pre-buy oil contract bill, which is very important. What's happening now is the consumer protection laws are fairly weak on that issue. And we were having, like Exeter, for example. We had a big oil company go under and took about $535,000 with them
Yeah.
that people didn't get their oil, couldn't get their money back.
Wow.
So we put in a bill requiring an escrow account. So when you do a pre-buy oil contract, the company can take 25% of the money and use it as operating capital, but 75% has to go into an escrow account that they can draw down when they buy oil and fill your tank.
Okay.
The only fair way to do it. If they
Sure.
go out of business, the money's there in the escrow account, and it's between the oil vendor and the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division.
Okay.
So if they go out of business, Consumer Protection. Let the buyer beware was the comments coming out of the Free Staters. No,
course.
we don't want the government regulating anything.
Of
We
course,
want to
yeah.
keep them out.
Yeah.
And after that, another oil company went out.
Yeah.
And we had a very sad situation over in Keene where a decent-sized oil company that had a lot of local government contracts, schools, town office buildings, etc., fell on hard times, marital issues, blew his brains out. Nobody got a thing. Everything was leased, rented, and that was the extreme. That was heartbreaking because you just feel for the family, the wife, the kids, the customers. And it's this dismantled state government. Like Gary was talking about, nobody realizes how many union Republicans we have because they've never taken the time to talk to us.
Sure.
Attack us, that's what's been happening.
Yeah.
But sit down and talk. We agree probably on the majority of issues. But nobody's going to sit down and talk when somebody's screaming at you and calling you communist and union thugs.
Yeah.
I remember one of my floor speeches, Gary. I said, I looked at the speaker and I said, Mr. Speaker, I don't think anybody realizes that us union thugs come in all sizes, just like the speaker. And Bill walked away from the mic like,
Yeah.
And so I went and delivered the speech, and we were able to sustain the governor's veto. Had we sat down and talked, we could have avoided a lot of these fights.
Yeah.
And we're lining up to do it again on the retirement. You know, they just put together this special retirement committee that's supposed to have the report out, 10 hours before Election Day or some ridiculous thing. Mm-hmm. When you do that, everybody that's on there, except for the 3 Democrats, at least 2 of the Democrats, everybody that's on that is pretty much anti-retirement. They want to change everything.
Sure.
Well, why didn't they put some state employees on there or some union members that are going to be involved in this just to balance it out and add information and talk and point out areas that maybe they're going to agree on, maybe they're not going to agree on, but understand the issues totally? Mm-hmm. No, they didn't do it. So
Oh, they're
gonna
the enemy.
Yeah, they're going to be attacking again.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say is I suspect there's going to be a lot fewer Republicans up there this time
Really?
than there was the last time. And we're going to hold on to a majority, according to the experts, by maybe 15 to 20 votes. Mm-hmm. That's how close it's going to be.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if it's going to be that bad. I think it could be because of what we have done, how we've been portrayed as heartless, no good, mean Republicans. Well, that's not all of the Republicans.
Right.
And I think that's what's going to be a shortcoming on the Democrats' part, because they're going to be able to stand up. People are going to be able to stand up and say no. Some of us said no because of
Right.
our moral compass.
Yeah.
And A lot of these people do not realize that when you're elected from your district. You're responsible to the voters. You're responsible to what they want. You go to Concord, and if you don't do what the speaker says, or the group up there of Free Staters and Libertarians, well, you're not a Republican. You know what? I could care less. They could call me names all day long. When my district starts calling me those names, then I'm going to be a little upset.
Right.
Because I'll know I'm doing something wrong.
Right, yeah.
But, you know, there are certain words in the state of New Hampshire politically that are dirty words. And it depends on who you are and what part of the state you're in. So, you know, we just grin and bear it, know that there's going to be change. We just do what we think is right, and hopefully we do what we think is right, and hopefully the voters think what we're doing is right.
Yeah, I think the, it's, oh man, I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say?
You were,
I'm
I don't know.
going to pull a pin on that grenade.
Oh, yeah, before I forget.
Oh, that's what you were going to say.
Show them how to fix the grenade so it works better.
Well, if you look at a hand grenade, I don't know how well the camera can pick it up. You see these two little holes in the top of the grenade? A case of grenades will come with straight pins with wires. And what you do is you put one straight pin in right here, the first hole towards the front of the grenade, and that is basically your safety pin. Then you take and put your second pin, this is your booby trap pin, right behind it towards the end of the what we call the plunger. And that holds the mechanism back. Now when somebody trips, you take this off, of course you take out the cotter pin, and those cotter pins are not easy to take out. What you do if you think you're going to use them is you pre-crimp them. You close them up so you can pull them out easy and throw the grenades. But the booby trap pin goes in here, you take out the safety pin there, you run your wire, and just let it go. Because once the plunge is off, there's nothing that's going to stop it, that's going to hold down the firing mechanism. It's like a firing pin. And it just flips up, hits the blasting cap, you have a few seconds, and then it goes off. So I told Gary I was going to show him how to booby trap a hand grenade. Like this is something he's going to use deer hunting.
No, I was thinking of in the legislature, in the men's room.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
Well, at least you're using the more humane one.
Yes, this is you probably knew that, but
What's
this
that, the M60?
this is the baseball one they use in Vietnam.
Yeah.
These are the humane ones. The pineapple ones in World War II. The Geneva Convention said that those are inhumane. And that's why they had to stop using them.
We used to have rules of land warfare which dictated how you kill somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, you could stick them through the eye with a bayonet. You could cut their throats, but if you cut off an ear, that was a war crime.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, it was quite interesting. I don't know who wrote it up. I think it was probably a liberal.
Well, probably.
Yeah, that's a war crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Maybe it was a Vulcan.
Vulcan, yeah.
Very.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
They're
You know, because they got the
sensitive.
sensitive pointy ears.
Yeah, they're a little bit sensitive.
Yeah.
But the
It's
what?
not logical to cut off an ear.
Right. Before before the show, you were talking to Norm from Norm and Friends, and you were explaining your position on medical marijuana, and I hadn't heard you argue that point before, but
I never went to the floor for it, but in May of '69, I was at a fire base that was pretty much overrun. A couple of platoons held out, and we got hammered. We got hurt.
how many guys you lose, you know?
Lots. And what happened was 2 bunkers were smoking marijuana. They could have given a rat's hiney less about what was going on around them. The first 100 North Vietnamese broke through the wire, blew the wire, and just ran through. Didn't even stop to kill those 2 bunkers. The second wave killed them, and that gave us time to try to put together 2 perimeters to hold them from the ammo dump, because we were using up a lot of ammo, what was left of us. So when they ever say, oh, well, marijuana is good and we could use it, most of these people that I've found that have been calling me are pretty much libertarians that don't believe in drug laws, marijuana laws, or any of that. But to me, it's not so much medical as it just is personal. I remember what happened. And one of the most powerful ads on TV in Vietnam was 4 or 5 guys sitting in a bunker smoking marijuana and yucking it up and laughing. And then the next scene was looking down the sights of an AK-47, and they're all dead. And that was the most powerful ad I ever saw about
Against marijuana?
against marijuana. And so that it's a personal thing with me. I
Right.
policed up the dead. I knew the cause of that. I watched a whole platoon that was wiped out before they ever got out of bed. And so it's just a very personal, intense thing with me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's enough other drugs to use that would have pretty much the same effects
Right.
than marijuana.
I told you my house. You might have remembered quite a few years
I
ago.
remember when you went to the floor.
For the my glaucoma speech.
Right, I thought that was great.
Yeah, I went to the.
Your lobster speech was a good one, too.
Yeah, well, the house. I went to the House floor and I said that as far as medical marijuana, that as somebody with glaucoma, I can speak to only that. I don't know about the other uses of medical marijuana, but as somebody with glaucoma, I can assure you that the medication that my ophthalmologist can provide for me now is actually more effective for treating glaucoma than marijuana. I said, but the distinct advantage of using marijuana to treat glaucoma is that if you do go blind, you won't care.
Right.
Well, now they're trying to say that marijuana will help you lose weight.
Oh.
You know, so, you know.
Oh, yeah, eating Twinkies always helps lose weight. I know that.
Yeah,
See, I'm a libertarian on this one.
yeah, I know,
I
I
am.
know, yeah.
I just and I'm not even a smoker, so I don't have a dog in this fight. I
Right.
don't get high, but I think the war on drugs is a miserable failure. And what is it? 1 in 6 people in prison nationally are in for
I don't know.
some
that-
sort of
that-
drug offense.
That's what they say, but a lot of times if you follow, I don't know, but I am
Right.
willing to bet that if you followed that statistic, you would find that there was a guy who got out of prison. Well, you were a parole officer, you know better than me. Probably got out on parole for rape, and they checked his blood or they found him in possession with marijuana, which was a violation of parole, so he's back in jail. His real reason for being in jail is rape, not pot.
no, I disagree. I think
Okay.
that there's been a major breakthrough. I think the real reason for being in prison is they went to kindergarten.
Oh, the Bob Kingsbury thing.
Yeah, I mean, that appears to be documented.
Okay, go
So,
ahead.
I don't know.
Elaborate.
Oh, you don't know about this? Bob
You didn't
Kingsbury.
see that?
Oh, Bob
No.
Kingsbury. Here, would you like me to pull it up? I think it's hilarious.
I think Gary needs to see it because
What is that?
Bob Kingsbury, I talked about this on my show last week. He has found through his own research, has found a link between kindergarten and violent crime.
in prisons.
Let's see.
I always thought kindergarten was like a little prison.
It is.
They wouldn't let the kids out on their own.
Yeah, kids could be out playing.
But you know,
no,
when we're
there's-
talking about marijuana, I think what's really interesting is that we're discussing it and we're not calling each other names or attacking or we're
No, I
keeping-
call him names all the time, but it's usually behind his back. 'cause
Yeah,
Right,
it's very
right,
civil.
yeah.
I
He's probably
think
younger and faster than me. So.
he could probably take you. He could probably take you in a
Yeah,
fair
so,
fight,
yeah.
but don't fight fair. That's
Yeah,
the secret.
well, that's, yeah, I know.
You want me to read this really
Now,
quick?
who's Bob Kingsbury?
Oh,
he's-
Bob sits in the second row. Bob is the old soldier.
Okay.
He's 86 years. Here, I'll read this really quickly.
Oh, okay. I think I know. I'm okay, good.
A Republican lawmaker in New Hampshire explained his controversial statement last week that kindergarten leads to higher crime was based on statistics. He found a 400% jump in crime in towns with his early childhood education program, he claimed. Last week, Kingsbury, he's a Republican from Laconia, told fellow Belknap County lawmakers that research he has conducted since 1996 shows a connection between the state's kindergarten program and higher crime rates, attributing it to children being taken, quote, away from their mothers too soon. He discussed with the Huffington Post on Tuesday his research showing a dramatic jump in crime. He said, quote, the sources I have is that I went to the Department of Education and got a list of kindergartens, and I went to the Safety Department and got the crime report. In general, the towns with a kindergarten have 400% more crime than other towns in the same county. In every county, the towns and cities with kindergarten had more crime. Noting as well that some communities experienced a crime jump of 300%, he singled out his hometown of Laconia, the largest community in Belknap County. Compared to the other 9 communities in the county, Laconia had the highest crime and the only kindergarten program. Kingsbury cited crime reports indicating Laconia had 63 of the county's 70 rapes, So kindergarten causes rape. 6 out of 9 robberies, 44 out of 47 arsons, and 408 of the 506 simple assaults, along with all the county's murders and higher rates of other crimes. Isn't it the highest?
So fundamentally, it's the kindergartners that are out.
Apparently. There is a key thing, though, in here. This explains his line of thinking, though. I'll skip down a few paragraphs. He says, quote, "Children go to kindergarten at the point of a gun. Children go to daycare and it's not the same. There is no point of a gun." So I think that quote there reveals his whole thinking. In other words, he's looking at it as kindergarten is a socialist program. It's a socialist government program because you have to go to kindergarten if it exists in your community. So therefore, that leads to crime.
Well, you know what they did before they had kindergarten is if they had a kid that was maybe very smart but really didn't want to be in school because he didn't go to kindergarten or any of that, they coded him special ed.
Did they?
Yeah, and that stuck with them right up until they graduated.
Yeah.
And I know kids that have turned out extremely well that did not want to be in school, did not like to go to school, Huckleberry Finn, rather be out fishing if the weather was right. And I know one kid was sent to a shrink, and it was explained to the teachers that, look, kid doesn't like school, that's it. So the shrink, they spent $2,500. The report came back, and it was rather short. It said he doesn't like school.
Right.
I'm thinking, okay, can I get some money for doing these evaluations?
I went to kindergarten, though, so this does explain some of my hooliganism.
Is there anything you'd really like to tell us?
I'm actually a crime lord.
Okay.
Really?
I don't usually admit it, but when I leave here, I wear leather and chains and shoot people
Hit a
with
bulletproof
Uzi.
vest. Yeah.
You wear light loafers?
No, never.
No.
No, that would be less intimidating.
Yes.
I have conversations with people where I say things like, "You tell Alonzo I run this city." That's the kind of thing
Really?
I do when I'm not here. Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you get this big guy about 6'7". He goes, "I'm Alonzo." You say, "Wait a minute, I was only kidding." pal."
I'm not scared
No,
of
not
Alonzo.
that Alonzo.
No, not that Alonzo. I run this city. Anyway.
Oh, man.
But you know, it's becoming more problematic, and a lot of people are talking or were talking about they didn't want to run again. They had it. They were burned out. They were sick of the constant attacks, the name calling, and this is what we're facing now. But you know what? It's up to the voters. What people don't want to face, especially if you're a Democrat, and I know we're kind of in a Democratic city, so I'm treading lightly. The Democrats had 4 years. It was the perception of the voters that they screwed the state up 9 ways from Sunday. Taxes, bathroom bills, all this stuff, campgrounds, LLC. So they swept them all out. They got swept in, not because the Republicans were screwing up. It was because they used the name of George Bush as he's the devil.
Yeah. They rode that wave.
The Democrats rode the wave.
Yeah.
After 4 years, they rode the wave out.
Yeah.
Now they're getting ready to ride another wave in by just mentioning people's names.
Yeah.
So that's a major issue that they have to understand. That these radical swings, either to the left or to the right, are doing a great disservice to the state of New Hampshire. The best times we ever had were when the numbers were much closer.
Yeah.
We had to sit down and talk. We had to communicate. In 2000 to 2002, Peter Burling was the minority leader. And Soltani and I, being co-chairs of the HRA, were always detailed to go talk to Peter about what was coming up on the agenda, on the calendar.
Yeah.
And Peter, what are we going to fight over? What are we not going to fight over? How can we negotiate this out? So when it came to a vote, it was a very gentlemanly, ladylike discussion. And then afterwards, you always would congratulate the winner, and you congratulate the loser too, and say, "Look, I hope I don't have to go through another fight like that. You were just right on the money."
Sure.
And everybody walked away feeling
Yeah.
proud. They did the best they could and all that. The last floor fight we had on a public labor bill, I joked with one of the speakers, and I said, you really you had everybody captivated. He spoke after I did.
Yeah.
And everybody was paying attention. It was either because of your haircut or they listen to you, but I don't know which. Well, the Free Stater said, well, if you gave a speech like that, maybe you could win too. Well, we took the vote, and we did win.
Yeah.
So I just leaned over and I said, hey, so-and-so. I said, can we revisit that conversation about winning and losing again?
Yeah.
And he wouldn't even look at me or turn his head.
No kidding.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like Gary mentioned, Neil Kirk. Neil Kirk always goes after public sector employees and contracts and retirement. But Neil lost that battle, too. And it was so funny because I looked over at Neil and he looked over at me and I went,
Yeah.
good job. And he did the same thing back. Never any hard feelings with
Yeah.
Neil. I mean, we just go out and do our thing, and he knows where I'm coming from. I know where he's coming from, but it's never personal.
Yeah, that's good.
And, well, that's
But it
That's
sounds
why
like that's rare.
the
though.
old professionalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think the sweeps back and forth also bring with it the fact that you have such a high percentage of people that have never been up there and don't really understand what's going on.
I agree.
And don't understand that you still have to be courteous, professional. I mean, I talked to Republicans in the back room, and they'll talk about a Democrat and say, "Oh, I hate that person."
Yeah,
Why do you hate them?
right.
I disagree with them.
Yeah.
But some of the people actually that I care about the most up there are Democrats, just because I like them.
Yeah.
It's like Dave Waters is running for Senate against Phyllis Woods, right?
Right.
So I went up to Dave, because Dave is a really nice person. He was on the Fish and Game Committee. He was one of my go-to guys on as far as crossing the T's and dotting the I's. He was really, really good.
Yeah.
A really nice person. Obviously, I disagree with him on 60-some-odd% of the issues, and would never vote for him, but that doesn't mean I dislike him.
Right.
But that's not what I said to him. What I said to him was, I went up, Dave, I know you're running against Phyllis Woods, and Phyllis and I go way back, and we've been good friends, and I'm probably going to have to make up, you're such a nice person, I'm probably going to have to make up some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just to make the point of how ridiculous some of these fights are, if you're in a car accident, do you care if the medic is a Democrat? I mean, do you care what sexual orientation he is? The only thing you care about is you got a good medic that's going to try to patch you up.
Right.
I required some emergency medical treatment when I was in Vietnam, and it was done by a black Spec 5 medic, probably the only medic that lived through this situation, and he was being discharged or processed because he had glaucoma. I didn't even know what glaucoma was then.
Yeah.
I was like 19, 20 years old. And while he was patching me up, he told me the whole story. And I look back at it and I said, I forgot to ask him if he was a liberal Democrat
Yeah.
or what. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I would have been dead in 24 hours if he didn't clean me up.
Right,
And
right.
and that's, Reagan joked about it when he was shot. He goes, I hope there's no Democrats in here.
Yeah.
But that was a joke because he didn't care.
Right. Yeah.
And
You always hear about how because people talk about how toxic it is in Washington now, and you hear people talk about how in Reagan's day, Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they'd have a drink together at the end of it.
Oh,
At the end of the day,
It's, yeah. I mean,
they were
and that's
friends.
that's the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to, vilify everybody that you disagree with.
Right.
well, we
that's
take
basically what's
Gary
happening.
out to a bar across the street, and we have a special drink called the Hopper.
Yeah.
And it's at Tandy's. So if you go in Tandy's bar, ask the bartender for a Hopper.
Yeah.
And it's chocolate syrup, it's ice, and it's soda water and cream.
And cream.
Yeah, blended. And
Yeah.
It's really good,
Really?
non-alcoholic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
drink because I'm allergic to it.
Yeah, I heard those stories when you were younger.
I break out in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to put them on you.
Yeah.
Hey,
we gotta wrap.
Representative Quant, Lee, my friend, thank you for coming.
Yeah, this has been great.
Matt,
Yeah.
I don't hate you that much today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you,
all right.
Gary.
Are you going to show everybody your
Oh yeah,
your sex tape?
everybody watches the program knows that I got in trouble in the State House on Channel 9. They had a picture of me reading Shotgun News. Well, the fact of the matter is, it's this guy that keeps bringing them in for me.
He's an enabler.
He set me up.
Yes.
On Facebook, they said, why is everybody always blaming the quants? And somebody come out and said, because they're always doing something.
Yes,
well,
and
good
they are.
Good a reason as any.
Well, thank you both.
Yeah,
Oh,
see ya.
thank you, Lee. Thanks, everybody.